Hey, welcome. Today we are diving into a really big question, one that we all think about. What actually makes us happy? We're going to explore two powerful ideas from psychology, one that can feel like you're running in place, and another that's more like being carried along by a river. Let's get into it. So, let me ask you something. Have you ever worked super hard for something? A promotion, a new phone, that A plus on a paper, and you get it and you're thrilled, but then that excitement just wears off way faster than you thought it would? Yeah, if you felt that, you're definitely not alone. And it turns out there's a very real psychological reason for that feeling. And that reason has a name. It's often called the happiness treadmill. It's this idea that perfectly explains that frustrating cycle of getting a burst of joy, only to find yourself right back where you started. Okay, so the formal term for this is the hedonic treadmill, or sometimes hedonic adaptation. What it means is that deep down, we all kind of have this default happiness set point. No matter what happens, good or bad, even really big life-changing stuff, we have this incredible tendency to drift right back to our personal baseline. This is exactly why the treadmill metaphor works so well. We keep chasing the next goal, putting in all this effort, thinking this next thing will be the one that finally makes us permanently happier. But really, from a psychological standpoint, we're just running and staying in the exact same place. So you might be wondering, is this just a theory? Or is there any proof? Well, it was famously put to the test way back in a 1978 study. And researchers looked at two groups of people who had just been through some of the most extreme life events you can imagine. People who had just won the lottery and people who had recently been in accidents that left them paralyzed. And what they found was kind of mind-blowing. After that first initial shock, the massive euphoria for the lottery winners or the tragedy for the accident victims, both groups eventually reported happiness levels that were surprisingly close to where they'd been before it all happened. The huge win didn't lock in permanent bliss, and the terrible accident didn't mean permanent misery. Our happiness just adapts. Okay, so this all leads to a pretty big question, right? If chasing these huge external goals is just running on a treadmill, are we just stuck? Is there a different way to find fulfillment that doesn't feel like you're going nowhere? Well, the answer is a huge, resounding yes. So let's step off that treadmill for a minute and talk about the alternative. Let's talk about the river. This idea is known as being in a flow state. The name itself is so perfect because it came directly from people trying to describe this feeling. The psychologist who pioneered this research, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, was interviewing all these people who were at their absolute peak performance, artists, surgeons, athletes, and they all kept using this same metaphor. It felt like being effortlessly carried on by the flow. So what is it exactly? You've probably heard it called being in the zone. Flow is that amazing mental state of complete absorption where you're so into what you're doing that absolutely nothing else seems to matter. And the key word here is process. It's all about the enjoyment you get from the doing, not just the final outcome. I mean, you recognize these feelings, right? Have you ever been so locked into a project that you completely lose track of time? Or you're just so in it that you forget to feel self-conscious or worried? You're just there. The feeling that the activity itself is the reward, that is flow. And here's the best part. Flow isn't just some random magical thing that happens. It has specific ingredients. We can actually set the stage to experience it way more often in our lives. There are really three core conditions. First, you need clear goals. You know exactly what the next step is. Second, you get immediate feedback, so you can tell right away how you're doing. And third, and this one is the real secret sauce. There's a perfect balance between how challenging the task is and how skilled you feel. Yeah, that balance is absolutely everything. The task has to be hard enough that it captures your full attention, but not so hard that it just makes you anxious or frustrated. It's got to stretch you, but stay just within reach. It's all about finding that sweet spot. This little grid here, it maps out those feelings perfectly. See? If the challenge is super high, but your skill is low, you just feel anxiety. If your skill is really high, but the task is too easy, you get bored. But when both the challenge and your skill are high and they're in balance, that top left box, that is the channel for flow. Okay, so let's bring this all home. Let's put these two big ideas, the treadmill and the river, right up against each other. And man, when you look at it like this, the difference is just huge. The treadmill is all about focusing on the outcome, the trophy at the end. Flow is all about focusing on the process, the joy of doing the thing itself. On the treadmill, you just adapt and go back to normal. In flow, you are completely absorbed, and the result isn't staying the same. It's actual growth and real fulfillment. So what's the big takeaway here? It's this. While chasing those big external goals can give you a temporary high, it seems like real, lasting satisfaction comes from somewhere else entirely. It's not found in finally arriving at the destination, but in getting so lost in the journey that the destination almost stops mattering. So I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. In your work, in your hobbies, even in your conversations, where can you find that perfect sweet spot between challenge and skill? Where can you decide to step off the treadmill and find the river? Where are you